Today we are going to create Todo App using Flask and SqlAlchemy. But before writing the code, let's overview what we will have at the end of our lesson. I already opened the postman to review the requests. First is the post request, which will allow us to add the new task. Here we see that we have task. The ID would be increasing automatically, and we will have two fields, name and the content. One is the get request. Get request is a little bit more complicated because here we'll have few parameters to send, and we will have pagination in our Todo App. We need to save the current page, the page size. It means how many tasks we will see at the current page, and the filter where we will specify the status of the tasks. So if you want to display only completed task, not completed, and also all. Here we see that I already specified the all parameters, so the endpoint will return us all of the tasks. Also, I can change it to completed, and I will see only completed task and not completed, for example, completed false. And how many tasks were returned. Here the total is 2. I did it that way to simplify the work for front-end developers, so I will return for them all the calculation they need to display the task on the front end. And here we have the put, and for put we will do the update of the task. For example, if we have task with ID 1 here, and we want to change the complete to false, or we want to change the name of the task to something else, we can do it using put, and here there are fields that can be changed. For example, I can change it to false and send this request for task ID 1, and it will be changed. And the very last one is delete. For delete, it's just simple route because we only send the ID of the task and the task will be deleted. Let's try it. Okay, deleted. And that's it. And now let's open our IDE. By the way, I'm using PyCharm, and start to write the code. New project. The name of the project, let it be Todo YouTube. Create. Now let's create new file. Okay, by the way, in previous video the font was very small, so now I will try to do it bigger. Of course, you will need the Python installed. If you do Python -- version, you will see which version of Python do you have. I have Python 3.8.5, and to install the packages I will use package manager called pip. Pip install Flask Let's import Flask. Also, we'll need request to make the request and make response. It's obvious to make the response. Maybe we will need JSONify to make the JSON looks prettier. And of course, SqlAlchemy. To create an instance, we would give it a name using the name it ensures that it can be started as an application or imported as a module. It would be like app equal Flask name. Now let's specify the config for our database. By the way, we are gonna use SQLite as a database. The next step is to create the model. We're gonna have only one model and the name would be task, and it will have 4 fields. Task, db.model. First is ID, which would be auto-incremented, db.column. The integer type of the field would be, and it would be primary key. Name, db.column, string, let it be 50 characters long. Content, db.column. Content would be a little bit longer than the name, so let's use not string but text type. And the last one would be the status of the task. Let's name it complete, db.column. Completed would be the boolean type, and the default value of this complete field would be false, because the task, once we add new task, it would be false, and then we will have opportunity to change it to the true, so to make it complete. And that's it from the model. And the next thing would be to create the roots. We use the root decorator to bind the function to the URL. Let's create the first one. We will start from the post root, app.root. Now slash and text of the root, it would be, for example, task, because we're going to add the task, so let it be task. And methods would be, of course, post. We don't want to send any parameters. The plan for this route would be to read the parameters from the request and add those parameters to the database model, and then add those model to the database session, then commit it, and also we're gonna return some response that, for example, some task is created with the status 200 if it's created successfully. So first of all, read parameters from the request. Here we imported the request from the Flask, so we can use it here. Request.getJSON. new task would be the model name of the model, and then task name equal data name content equal data, and completed false would be by default. So a new task here we created, and now let's add it into the database. db.session.add new task and db.session commit new task. And the last step, let's return something once the request is successfully sent. Return. Previously we imported make response here, so we can use it, make response. Disonify a new task is created, and the status would be 200, so it means that task is successfully created and first route is finished, so we can now check how it would work. But before doing that, we need to create the database. To do that, I somehow cannot make the terminal bigger, so I will just pronounce what I'm writing. So we're gonna create the database before task our route. To do that, let's go to the Python. From app is the name of the file that we created, app import db. Okay, it should be Flask SqlAlchemy. So I imported app from db, from app import db. Here is db that I imported, and now I need to create the database table. db create all. I don't see any errors, so the database should be created with the table. Okay, here is the database, Todo SqlAlchemy. It is created, so now I can try to run my application. I run the command flask run to run the application, and here we see that it is running on the Ford 5000. And to test it, let's open Postman. Here is the port, and as the root we specified /task, so here it is, and in the body we have two fields. First is the name and next is the content. Let's run this request. Okay, I see that the error is it should be complete, not completed. Let's try it again. Okay, I'm not in debugging mode, so I will just do Command G to stop my application and then rerun it. And here we see that new task is created. Let's create one more task. Clean the room, something simple like read the book. to the task 2. Send. And also new task is created. So we have 2 tasks, and let's have one more thing here, because we will have the delete route to paint the picture. So now we have 3 tasks in our database, and now we can go to writing. Now we can switch to writing the next route, and next route would be get. The same thing as with post app dot route. Here would be only slash and method of course it would be get. Get all tasks. This route would be bigger than the previous one, because here we don't want to only get all tasks, because we're gonna have the pagination in our To-Do app, and to for example, if user is on the page 1, we should return only the tasks which are related to the page 1, and also in each page we should know how many tasks should we return. So if user is on page 1 and in each page we're gonna show, for example, 5 tasks, we should return in the get request the count of the tasks in this page, also in which page is user currently, and also what is the how many pages do we have, for example, and total amount of tasks. And also we should know, should we return completed tasks, not completed task, or maybe we should return all of the tasks. To do that, we gonna use 3 fields which we'll send in the request. First, it would be the page size. It's just simple size of the page, so how many tasks do we want to show on the page. Also, we want to return the current page, so in which page is currently user, and also filter. In filter there would be 3 options. First one, it would be let's return all of the tasks. Next one is let's return only completed tasks, and the last one, let's return not completed tasks. It maybe sounds not very easy and complicated, but let's start to write the code and it would be much simpler. So first, let's specify our filters. First will be all. Completed. And not completed. Next, let's read the request arguments. First would be page size. Request dot args dot get page size, and if it would be empty, the value of page size would be none. Next, current page, request, args, get, current page, none, and the last one, filter, request, args, get, filter. Let's Google how to do the pagination in the SqlAlchemy. Okay, I see it should be, here is the link to the documentation, but in this example it should be query.paginate, then the page, how many pages should return, and something which is called false. I don't know what it is, let's Google it. Okay, there is pagination in SqlAlchemy, and we can send how many pages per page we should return, in which page are we, how many pages we want to return, and the maximum amount per page. When error out is true, the following rule is, and error out we will specify as false. Okay, let's use it. .query paginate I am converting the data into int because for pagination we need it to be in integer type, and here we will return a string. So I'm converting here into the integer, current page and page size, and false for the error. For filters, as we discussed previously, in filters we have three options. First is all, next is completed, and the very last one is not completed. So if the task is completed, we want to return only completed tasks. If filter is not completed, we want to return only not completed tasks. And if filter is all, we gonna return all of the tasks. So let's write these conditions. If filter equal all, so this value, task query. Actually, let's copy this line. If filter equal filter completed, But here before paginate we should filter by completed. Dot filter by complete false. And let's copy it. Not completed. Actually, not completed, completed false and completed true. That is it for the filters. And else, very last option, if there is something wrong is filter or we send the filter which is not in our list of filters. Here is our list of filters. If we did some mistake, for example, in filter and send something or send something else, we should return that filter not found. So return make response. Make response we imported here from the Flask at the very beginning. So now we are using just it. Make response JSONify. Filter not found. And status, for example, 4 or 4. Okay, so if filter would be wrong, we will return make response 4 or 4. And the next one we should go and next thing we want to prettify the object that we get from the database. So we will have the for loop to go one by one for each of the items that we have in the task data and prettify a little bit it, and also add those should get its items. So task item, task query dot items. And as we discussed previously, we want to return also the total. So total would be task items, but the len of task items. So how many items is in task would be the total. And now let's format the result JSON. Output, for example, put equal empty array, and we can go in for loop for task in task item and to format the output we're gonna go in the for loop through the tasks in task items, and for each task we want to save it in the format with ID, name, content and complete. And so we will have in the response a few things. First is total, next is page size, next is the current page and items. And in the key items, we're gonna have all of the items, so all of the tasks that we format and get from database previously. Let me show how we're gonna do that. Task items. Task data equal empty dictionary. So for each task, it would be like new task data, task data ID equal task ID, task data name equal task name, task data content, task.name, task content, dot content, and task data complete equal task complete. Okay, and in the output we want to say all of this task data output append, because it's a list, task data. Looks okay for me. And then let's format response. Response JSONify, because we want to return the response in JSON format. JSONify. I hope we imported JSONify. Okay, we imported JSONify at the beginning. So JSONify, and now total. Total we calculated here. Page size. I think the page size was in string. Okay. Here we return the page size and it would be string because it comes from the request. So we convert it into integer. Current page. Also int because we return it from the request. Current. And items, or we can name them like tasks. Output. And very last step, we want to return this response. Return response and status. And status HTTP 201, which means created. I think this route was like the longest one that we're gonna write, so the next two would be much simpler. So I think we need to test it now because we wrote a lot of code, so it might be some errors here. So let's try to run it and to debug, and not to write Flask run each time in the console, we can do it here to run it in the debug mode. Let's write if name main app.run debug equal true. And now I can run the app, press the right button and run in the PyCharm IDE. App is running. Now let's test our request. Here we have three parameters: current page, page size and filter. As the first filter I specified all, so here it should be returned all of three of tasks that we added in the post request. Let's try. Okay, we have first error, so something is wrong. Okay, the wrong is the naming. Here should be filters and filters, because we're getting filter from here. I need first of all to install the Flask API, so pip to import the status from it. Pip install Flask API. And now I can import the status from it, from Flask API import status. And we see that the tasks are returned. We see that we have total 3 tasks. We have page size, which we send it, it's 10, and we have current page is 0. We already sent the 0 here, and here we see the 3 tasks that we added previously: task with ID 1, with ID 2, and with ID 3, and 3 of them are not completed because we just added them. To make them completed, we should add a new request, which would be put to update the status to the complete true. But before do that, let's try different options here. We have 3 tasks, so let be the page size 2. So we want to return only 2 tasks. Let's test this way. Okay, we see the current page 0 as we specified here. Page size is 2. We have 2 items here and page size 2, and total of course is 2. Now let's add filter that does not exist. Filter all tasks, for example. And we see the error filter not found because we didn't write any rule for filter like this. So let's return to all. Okay, and we can also test the complete filter. Completed async. Okay, we don't have any completed tasks yet. Not completed. Okay, not completed tasks are turned. So all of the filters are working correctly. Now let's go to write the update request, which would be put, and here I already have it created, and how it would look like. We input request, we're gonna specify the task and the ID of the task, and 3 fields that we do want to update: name, content, and complete, true or false. And when running this request, the task status and also name or content will be updated. So this route would be simple, so let's start to do it. App.root /task /ID would be in the URL. So to read the ID from the URL, we should specify it like this. Methods equal put ID would be set in the URL as I mentioned previously, so we want to read it here. Data equal request JSON, again JSON, name, data name equal data.get name, to get the task from the database, we should import filter it by ID, task equal task dot query dot filter by ID equal ID, this ID that we get as a parameter, and we all want to return only one record for first one. If there is no task, if not task, make task not found, and status 404, which is equal to not found. Task dot name equal name, task dot content equal content, task dot complete equal complete, and db dot session commit and return. Status 200, which means successfully updated successfully in our case. I think that is it. So what we did to update the task, we get the task ID from the URL here. Also in the request we get three fields, which is name, content and complete. We filter by ID, so get the tasks by ID from the database, and if task is not found in database, we return response the task not found. If task exists in database, we specify new name, new content and new complete status to the task that we return here. Also, we commit this data into database and make response that we already updated the data for the task in the database. So let's try how it would look like. Put for task ID 1, we want to change the complete to the true. Also, we specified new name and the new content and complete true. Let's try. Okay, some error, name request is not defined. It's just error in the writing the request. Simple. Okay, we have it updated, and now let's check if it is updated. So here is the task with ID 1. As we see, we have completed true, new content here and new name. So our route is working, and we can go to the next, which is get but only one item, and the very last one would be delete item by ID. Up dot root task /id. Method would be get. Task equal task dot query dot filter by ID equal ID that we will get from the URL dot first, because we only want to return the first item. If not task, return make response JSONify ID not found. Error status 404. To display everything in the JSON format, we need to do some serialization. So we will create new dictionary and save the name, content, and completed in the new dictionary, and then convert dictionary into JSON. Let's test it. For example, we want to get information about task number with ID 2, and here is the task with ID 2. Completed false, content and name. So it is working. Now we can go to the very last route, which is delete. Up dot root task dot ID. Method would be delete. delete task. First, we want to query the task that we are going to delete. Task.query .filter by id equal id and get first one. If the task not exist, if not task, return make response db.session.delete task and commit db.session and let's return a response. And status 200. Looks okay for me. Let's test this one. Delete task with ID 1. Deleted. And let's get task with ID 1. ID not found because we already deleted. So that was the very last route that we created. So let's summarize what do we have now. So first route is post, which we use to create the task. The task have two fields that we specified in the post request body, which is name and content, because we don't specify the complete here because the complete is false by default in this route. Once we add the task, we can get task, for example, with ID 1, and we have get request where we specify ID, send it, and we return the data for task with a specific ID. Also, we can get all of the tasks. Here we can use different parameters. For example, we can change the current page, the page size to what we need, and also we can use different filter with 3 options: all, complete, or not complete. And we will return the data in this format with the current page and page size and also total count of tasks on this page. Also, to update the task, we have put method with 3 fields: name, content, and complete. So once we send it, we can update task, for example, with ID 1. And also to delete the simple one, we specify only ID and can delete the task. And that's it for this video.